You know what nobody tells you when you retire? That you're going to wake up on day 3 of this new permanent vacation and you feel completely lost. Not relaxed, not free. I mean lost. You know, I'm talking about that specific kind of disorientation where you've got nowhere to be, you've got nothing urgent to do, and somehow that feels worse than the Monday morning commute ever did. Welcome to Old Man Thriving. I'm Gus, I'm your host. And no, I haven't figured all this out yet, but I've stopped pretending I have, and at least that's a start. So this channel is for guys like me, men who spent the better part of 30 or 40 years building a career, showing up, being useful, and then one day, it just all stops. And everyone around you is saying, "You must be so happy, congratulations, you've really earned this." And you're nodding along and you're thinking, yeah, I should be happy. But there's this quiet voice in the back of your head going, okay, well, now what? So that's what we're doing here. I'm not trying to give you motivational bullshit, no live your best life kind of nonsense. Just real talk about what this retirement transition actually looks like. The hard parts, the surprising parts, and yeah, the good parts too. So today's first episode is about adjusting to retirement, because if you're new to this or about to be, you need to hear some things that nobody bothered to say out loud. Here's how it actually goes. Week 1 of retirement. You feel like you won. You sleep in, you drink your coffee without having to look at the clock. Maybe you finally tackle that project in the garage that you've been putting off since 2009. Life is good. And then week 4, different story. The novelty has started to wear thin. The garage project is done. Now you're sitting there at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning wondering what the hell you're supposed to do with yourself now. Now what you're feeling, that restlessness, that low-grade anxiety, maybe even a real kind of sadness, that's not weakness. That's not you failing at retirement. That is an absolutely normal response to a massive life change that most of us were completely unprepared for. And here's the thing that really threw me for a loop when I first read it. One study found that people in their first year of retirement are about 40% more likely to have a heart attack or stroke than people who are still working. 40%. That really got my attention, and it really should get yours too. So we spend years, literally years, planning for retirement financially. We set up a 401k or a pension. We plan on when we're going to take Social Security. We put together frickin' spreadsheets, for crying out loud. And then we completely ignore the psychological side of it. Like that part's just going to take care of itself. Well, it doesn't. Because here's what you actually lose when you retire. And nobody puts this in the brochure. You lose your identity. You know, for most of us, when someone asks, "So what do you do?" we always had that answer. You know, I'm an engineer, or I'm a manager, I'm a teacher, I'm a business owner, whatever. You know, that answer came with weight, came with status, had some meaning. And then one day, you don't have that answer anymore. And you lose your structure. You know, I didn't realize how much I needed the rhythm of a workday until it was gone. The commute I hated so much was actually forcing me to move. The lunch break was like a social event. Even those boring meetings somehow gave shape to my day. You take all that away and your days start bleeding into each other. And you lose your social network. For a lot of us, our friends were actually our work colleagues. And when you leave those relationships, even the good ones, they mostly don't survive that transition. Not because anyone's a bad person, just because the thing that held you all together is now gone. None of this means that retirement is bad. It means that, though, that the transition is real. And pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. All right, so we've established that retirement can be a psychological gut punch if you're not prepared? What do you do about it? So I'm going to give you the actual stuff, not the take up golf or pickleball advice that you can get anywhere. First, stop fighting those emotions and just feel them. When that restlessness shows up, and it will, don't try to outrun it by staying busy or numb it with a few extra beers. I tried both of those things. It doesn't work. What works, though, is acknowledging your feelings, saying, yeah, I miss having a purpose. That's real. When you stop fighting the feeling, it stops having so much power over you. Second, you need to redefine who you are on purpose. And this one can be uncomfortable, but it matters a lot because you're not your job title anymore. So who are you? If you don't know, that's not a crisis. That's actually an opportunity if you're willing to do the work. Maybe you're now a mentor or a full-time grandfather, a craftsman, a student, or like me, a traveler. I think my wife felt sorry for me. She was watching me stumble around trying to adjust to retirement, but I was turning into a grumpy old man instead. So she comes to me and she says, you know what? You need to go on vacation, all by yourself. Have a good time. She probably actually needed a vacation from me. And like a dumb shit, I didn't immediately just jump on that. I had to think about it until I didn't have to think about it anymore. And so here I am. I'm coming to you from Hawaii in a condo overlooking the Alawai Boat Harbor, just north of Waikiki Beach. And I'm on a month-long solo adventure. I sure do love my wife for letting me do this. So figure out what you want the answer to that question. So what do you do? What do you want that answer to be now? Then go out and do that thing. Third, set some damn goals. I know, you've just escaped 40 years of performance reviews and quarterly sales reports. The last thing you want is more goals, right? But here's the truth. Men without goals tend to drift. We need to be working towards something all the time. But the difference is the goals now get to be all yours, not someone else's, not your boss's. They're your goals now. You could have a goal of learning how to cook like a chef. You could be wanting to get your handicap in golf down by 5 strokes. Or you could be writing that book that you've been putting off for years. It doesn't matter what it is. Just pick something and commit to chasing it. Fourth, don't isolate yourself. Now this one might be the hardest thing for us, honestly. Because men are not great at maintaining relationships. We tend to let the work social network carry us. When that's gone, we wake up and we realize that, hey, we don't have many close friends, do we? So fix that. Call up those old work colleagues. Join something, a club, a class, a volunteer organization. Anything that gets you around other people on a regular basis. You need that more than you think. So let me spend a minute on routine because I underestimated that pretty badly. There's comfort in structure. Even if you hated your old routine, it was doing something for you. It was anchoring your day. It was giving you transitions. It was keeping you moving. Without any structure, you can easily slip into a version of retirement that looks awfully a lot like a slow decay. Too much TV, too much napping, too much of doing nothing. And that might feel like you're relaxing, but it's actually the very opposite of what your brain and your body need. So I'm not saying you need a schedule like you're back at work, but start to get up at a consistent time. And try to build in exercise into your routine, even if it's just 30 minutes of walking every day. Have something you always do in the morning, and have something to look forward to every afternoon. The structure doesn't have to be rigid. It just has to exist. Look, here's the honest truth about retirement. It's like a second act. And like any second act, it can go one of two ways. It can be the chapter where the story sort of just fades out. You lose your edge, your purpose, your health, your friendships, and you spend all of your remaining energy looking back at what once was. Or it could be the chapter where you strip away everything that wasn't really you, like the job title, the status games, the obligations, and you finally get to figure out who you actually are and what you actually want. Now, I know which chapter I want to write for myself, and I suspect that you do too, or you wouldn't be watching this, right? That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I'm not going to sit here and sell you on some fantasy where retirement is nothing but golf and grandkids and beautiful sunsets. But I will tell you that the guys who come out on the other side of this transition thriving, and they do exist, they all have a few things in common. They stayed engaged, they stayed connected, and they kept growing, they kept learning, and they stopped pretending everything was fine when it really wasn't. So that's what we're going to talk about on this channel every week, honestly. So that's episode 1. If any of this landed for you, if you found yourself nodding along, agreeing, whatever, or not agreeing, then I hope you would subscribe. Share this with a guy you know who could use it. And drop a comment. Tell me where you are in this transition. If you're just retired or about to be, if you're 5 years in and still figuring it out, I want to hear it. This whole thing is going to work better as a conversation, ongoing, not a lecture. Again, welcome to Old Man Thriving. You want to thrive in your old age? Then let's talk.